Everyone, we wanted to hear from Kumasi Hive because I think Kumasi Hive has been quite successful at managing quite a number of projects. So Rex, if you want to put your video on so we can record you, we can hear you clearly. And then just tell me when you want me to change the slides, okay?
Okay, sure.
Over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so let's get into what Kumasi Hive is about. We are usually known for we being a tech startup, and then we also implementing projects within Kumasi, Ghana specifically, and then Africa in general. Can we move to the next slide? Okay, so we have a number of projects that are running, and some of them are virtually ending. We have a staff strength of 15, a combination of interns and then 5 permanent staff. We have a just transition to circular economy project, artificial intelligence for agri-food systems. We have air quality monitoring project, wide market feasibility studies, and then the Star Africa project. And then, of course, the ones that we are usually invited to, like the IMA project. So these are the projects that are currently ended. How we have managed these projects has been that we have the CEO, the finance, and then the other team members who are within. Now, all of these team members are playing different roles within Kumasi Hive. But then the project lead and the research lead are always into the fundraising point of Kumasi Hive. So the project lead is always looking for where the next available grant is. And then together with the research team, we put together the documents. Now you see associates, technical associates, or just associates. These technical associates come on board to help at the implementation side, where the project lead and then the research team is also looking for fundraising. Now our communication goes through the media team and then the business team, and then they communicate directly with the funders. The media people are always managing our social media handles, and then the business team too are also looking for ways of interacting and sending the bits and pieces of information we have to the founders. So the whole initiation process starts from the project lead who is doing the fundraising. Then we go back to the bit that Andrew shared. When we have been able to win the contract, we do the reading, we look for who is signing. Usually the CEO will do the signing for Kumasi Hive, and then the project lead would also ensure that the project associates and the technical associates are also implementing the project. Now you see other departments, because then these are people, we call them technical people or people with the hard skills, the software people, the biolab people, and the makerspace people. Now, usually they are leading the projects, and then the associates are also implementing. So anybody within this map can lead the project depending on the skill set that is available. Can we move to the next slide? Hi, Andrew. Can we move to exactly? Yeah, so as part of we putting the documentation together to win grants, we always try to get staff CVs. We do not want to be looking for people when they are not available, or be telling people to update their CVs when they are not, when they do not have time. And also different grants have different skill sets that we need to apply for. So then we do the skills auditing at the point where we have all of these CV in one repository. So we look at which skill qualifies for which funding, and then we lift the CV. We just do the writing so that we don't go after the person who would now have to spend a lot of time trying to update the CV and bringing it back to us so that we can apply. Yeah. Yes, so once we have been successful at getting the project, there's what we call communication. Now, usually it becomes difficult when we want to track people and what they are doing. Initially, we were using the Trello board. And on the Trello board, we just use the research team to create a dashboard within the Trello board. And then everybody has the opportunity to put their tasks on the Trello board. Then you share your link with your supervisor or the CEO, then they are able to go to your Trello board to see what tax you are actually performing at any point in time. And then when you are done with your tax, you are able to also check the tax that you are done. So whilst you are working, we do not usually come to stop you to find out what you are doing, but just a glance at the Trello board tells us what you are doing. And then we also leverage our emails and WhatsApp to do internal communications. Then aside that, moving from the Trello board, we noticed that we would also help ourselves by using our Excel sheet. So we can move to the next slide. So on the Excel sheet, we created, on the Excel sheet, so this is an example of the Excel sheet where we have Monday, you list all your activities. Then there is a status side where you can indicate whether or not you have completed your task, whether or not it's not done. Then you put the dates for the completion in there. So usually this Excel sheet has all the staff members on it, and then we are able to see everybody doing what at what time, and then at what pace and what level that task has been completed or not completed. Can we move to the next slide? Yes. So along the line, we are also curious about keeping information about what people are doing, how many clients they have engaged. So this is also a tracking sheet where we fill it monthly. So you could see the makerspace has the number of clients they have actually engaged. They also have users of the makerspace. So we track all of these numbers just so when we have the opportunity to talk to any funder, we are able to put the figures out there, and we are able to also get some funds in there so that they would see what we have been doing and would realize that, okay, we are up to tax. Yeah, we can move to the next slide. Yes, so on the monitoring and evaluation, documentation and knowledge management side, we realize that usually different donors have different templates. And it's sometimes difficult to just decide that you are filling each template at a different time. So we created a simple tax sheet where this tax sheet, you state what you are working on, whatever project it is, the main activities of the project, and then you put in the goals, what would be the KPIs of this project, and then whether or not your activity is a continuous activity. You indicate all of that in this sheet so that we can populate, the research team would populate the Excel sheet with the information on this sheet so that it becomes very easier when we want to go back to the donors template to complete. We have all the information at one point, and then we are able to lift the information from our internal sheets to the donor sheet. Can we move to the next slide? It's same with reporting. Usually, we realize that over time, when you implement a lot of projects, certain things are very generic. So we decided to put together a template or a format for which we are going to write our reports. Now, these reports need relevant documents like implementation plans, application records, attendance records, surveys, and other stuff. Now, all of these things go into the reporting. Now, in the main reporting, we envisage that if we tell most associates or most individuals to put together the report, it may take time. So we would rather put together a template and tell you what to put in that report. So usually you do your cover page, your introduction, it has your background, what problem you are trying to solve, the objectives, the main activities within the project, the outcome of the project, your challenges, your conclusion. Then if there are reference documents that you need to add, you also put them in there. Now, what this will do for us is that once you have been able to put the information in this format, it becomes easier to go to the donors template and then lift whatever information you are looking for to put in the donors template. It makes the work very easier. Now, all of these templates now goes back to the research team, and then they populate the template so that the technical associates and the technical people on the project have the time to implement the project and focus well on the project. Can we move to the next slide? So it's same with this. This is a continuation of the template. We also have an event report. So usually there are one-time events that happen. For instance, if we want to have a startup meetup, it's just an event. And then the reporting is such that you just give a brief introduction, the main activities, and same with outcomes, and then all the table of content. So usually we give all of these templates at the beginning of the project, or once a while, we come together as staff members, and then we take all the staff, all the members within the organization through this template so that they know that, okay, this is the format we have to write our report, and it is easier for them to also request for this document from the research team and then complete it. Then the research team can now progress to also complete the donors template. Can we move on to the next slide? Let's move on. It's same. Yes. So the critical part of it, the budgeting and financial oversight. So usually, what we do is we do not raise funds for ourselves, or we do not make profits. So a way to be sustainable is to make sure that we have an internal implementation plan and budget. Now we budget such that we have some margins left for the organization so that we can be sustainable. So this is, if you like, an implementation plan, who is leading what within a project, what time are we expecting to get the project done, what are the resources we need. This gives us a clear picture of what we want to do. Now, this template is usually focused on by the finance team and then the CEO, usually checking how we do the spending and then when to write what to a donor. So at every point in time on every project, you would find an internal implementation plan and then a budget. The next slide has an example of the budget. Can we look at it? Yes, so this is an example of a budget and then how we want to procure those items. So from the implementation plan, all the items that are needed to be procured now comes to the budget with the unit cost, the quantity, the total amount, and the descriptions, then how we are going to get it, so that the finance team has an idea of what we want to do, how we want to get it, and then how we can also retire funds. So in brief, this is how Kumasi Hive handles projects. After we have gone through the writing stage, we have gone through the reading the documents, who is signing. These are the processes we go through so that it becomes very simple for the finance team, for the research lead, for the project and grants lead. Yep. Can we move?
Rex, is this the that's the last slide? But before
Yes,
we
please.
move on, can I just say thank you very much, because a lot of what I've been sharing in these workshops has been you know, sort of high level tips and tricks and things. You've actually shown us your work here, and you've done it incredibly quickly. I don't know how you're able to save us so much time. And in preparing and our preparations for this workshop, I know that you've got an awful lot of experience to share as well in managing these things. I think one of the questions I have, if I may, is in this structure where you have the associates and you have the technical assistants who might be assigned to a dedicated project, and you have the project leads. Could you give us an indication of the time commitment? So you're in a makerspace where you're, or an innovation hub where you're managing often lots of projects at once, 5 at the moment, but you're often over the course of a year, you might, or several years, you might be managing lots of projects at once. So you have one person who's managing all of the projects. and then associates who are dedicated to those particular projects. I'd understood that. But can you give us a sense of like time percentage for the project and grants lead? How much do they spend managing existing projects versus fundraising for new projects?
So usually on a daily basis, 3 hours, 4 hours would be for looking for grants online and seeing whether or not the grants are really applicable to the various spaces that we have, so that we are able to determine which one we can apply for. Usually they have a pipeline of an Excel sheet where they list all of the grants, or he will list all of the grants that he feels that we can apply for. Now, once he has identified all of these, then the communication between the various teams, sometimes the makerspace, the biolab, the research team, we have that conversation. Now, the associates are at the implementation point. So at the majority of their time in the office is to see that all the projects are implemented.
And so the advantages and disadvantages of that structure. The advantage is that you have one person who can see where the gaps are in the existing structure of the organization. So you've got your biolab, your makerspace, your software IT teams, blah, blah, blah. And maybe the biolab isn't fully funded yet. So you can, for the year, so you can fundraise to fill that gap. So you have one person who can sort of do the fundraising and so on to fill those gaps. And that's actually separate from the chief exec function, which is often more about sort of the overall direction and strategy of the organization. The disadvantage, I suppose, is that it could be quite easy for those people, for that person, to reduce the amount of time they spend on fundraising because they're so busy managing existing projects. So I think what you've described there about the culture of, you know, making sure that you're always looking out for new opportunities, I think that's quite important. Does anybody else have any other questions for Rex and how he does things at Kumasi Hive, please? Great, thank you very much, Rex. I've really enjoyed working with you in preparing the presentations for today. I particularly love this activity sheet. I'm going to show something similar in a moment, and I think this is sort of recommended practice, but I think yours is very clear here. And then the context of a lot of this M&E and documentation side of things is actually you want to monitor and evaluate your organization as a whole across all of your projects. Whereas I think a lot of the content of what I've been presenting is one project at a time. And I'm not really talking about how you integrate that into the wider, you know, purpose and achievement of your organization. So I think this is a really important thing for everyone to see, is,
thank you,
you know, this way of sort of across all of your different projects being able to feed one monitoring evaluation system to show the broader impact of your work rather than just one project at a time. So I think that's really good. And I've worked in organizations that have done similar things before. And thanks for sharing the budgets. I mean, this is, I'll show something similar in a moment as well. One of the things that I'd like to be able to share with you, but I don't think I'm going to have time today, is essentially a gap, what we think of as a bit of a gap analysis. I've used this term before, where it's like, where are the gaps in the budget? This person's salary is only 75% paid for the year. This, you know, the rent for the makerspace is only 50% paid for the year. And then you know what you have to fundraise for. But that takes a little bit, that could be an entire session into itself, coming up with that kind of tool.
Yeah.
But across your 5 projects at the moment, is there a range of sizes? Are you dealing with some really big projects and some really small projects, or are they all more or less the same size? Because with a giant project and the small projects, the giant long-term project can often get forgotten. And whereas the smaller, more immediate projects take a lot of the energy. Do you have that focus, that sort of challenge at Kumasi Hive?
Usually the projects that comes in consortium are usually long-term projects. So for instance, the artificial intelligence for agri-food systems, we've had the first 3 years of it, and we are moving into the second 2 years of it. So sometimes it gets difficult in there, and the temptation to feel that, okay, it's still a running project, so let's take time and look at the short-term projects, get it done, and then focus again.
And that's the other challenge, isn't it? It's because you use the smaller, more immediate projects to fill the gaps in the organization's budget from these larger budgets as well. Okay, thank you.